Welcome to the Unearthed Man podcast, the journey of becoming a conscious man, hosted by Milvo. Hey all, Milvo here, and welcome to episode 38 of the Unearthed Man podcast. To kick off, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land in which we work and gather, and their continuing connection to land and waters. I pay respect to elders past, present, and emerging. I pay tribute to the diversity of First Nations peoples of Australia and their ongoing culture. Now, if this is your first time listening to the podcast, then welcome aboard. If you're one of my regular listeners, welcome back. I really appreciate your ongoing support. If you're looking to know more about the Unearthed Man, then you can find me on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. Just want to recognize what a beautiful man Tu is from last week's episode. I just love having the conversations with men who are able to move beyond their stories, beyond their past, and now being true examples of being a man and embodying both his masculine and feminine energies. In his breaking his ancestral cycle, his two sons will now grow up knowing what it is to live the life of a conscious man. Before I introduce today's guest, I need to take on a journey and why I'm excited to have this man on my podcast. After I went through my awakening experience in November 2019, I started the search for men who were conscious leaders and embodying their practice. I was keen to learn more about this new way of living. This led me to the Sacred Sons podcast. My guest was their first guest on episode 2, and I was blown away. He was this man talking about how civilized we all were, how indoctrinated we had become, and how we were either lacking emotion or trying our hardest to please everyone. He then mentioned a book he'd written, Man, Uncivilized. I'm like, fuck. This book is for me. I ordered it, it arrived, and by January I had read it and is now one of my go-to reference books. On the men's program I go, I just say, go and buy this man's book. It's the only book you actually need. Now, this is where the journey continues. My guest posts on Instagram, hey, show me the company my book keeps on your bookshelf. Up to this point, I was still flicking between my head and my intuition. On this occasion, I said, fuck it, went with my intuition, took a photo of his book on my bookshelf and sent it in. Next thing I know, I receive a message from him with the words, fuck yes. To take a step back, when I started my podcast in 2020, my first fear was, why would men want to chat with me on my podcast? I mean, no one really even knows who I am. When compiling a list of guests that I hoped would come on my podcast, today's guest was on the list of, geez, I'd love to get him on. However, how the hell do I even ask him? Why the hell would he come on my podcast? So back to the journey and now following my intuition. My guest had responded back to me. So I simply responded with how much this book meant to me and then asked if he would come on the podcast. He simply responded with, I'd love to be on your podcast. I was blown away, full of immense gratitude and filled with amazing confidence. Sometimes it just takes one man to lift another and then you both can fly. So enough about me and now on to about my guest. He knows men, how they think, what's behind their behaviour, and most importantly, their unique challenges in the modern landscape. He's the founder of the Uncivilized men's movement, the fastest growing men's movement in the world. He's the author of Today I Rise and Man Uncivilized, as well as a 2-time TEDx speaker, men's coach, and podcaster. Drawing upon an eclectic background ranging from professional bodyguarding and mixed martial arts to a master's degree in traditional Chinese medicine and meditation. He counsels men, women, and couples on how to better understand men's mental health and relationship difficulties. Although he's not quite sure how to feel about the title, he has been dubbed the Man Whisperer, as he has a unique ability to speak to men in a way that they can hear and understand. In 2016, after losing a pregnancy, his marriage, and his business partnership all within weeks of each other, he created a radical year-long social experiment to answer the questions, who am I and who am I as a man? Highlights of that year included volunteering with the dying as a hospice worker, meditating for 28 days straight in complete isolation and pitch black darkness in a Guatemalan hut, living in the frigid Utah wilderness for a month with only a knife, a water bottle, and a blanket. With a passion for people and a unique lens through which to view the human experience, he's a highly sought-after teacher in the fields of consciousness, intimacy, and personal development. When not teaching workshops or radically shifting the way men experience their masculinity, he can be found obsessing over a single word in front of his laptop, chasing surf around the globe, and being awful at yoga. I'm so excited to welcome to the Unearthed Man podcast, Traver Boehm. Hey, Traver. Look, thanks for coming on board, man.
Thank you for having me on, brother. I appreciate it and love the startup energy of your journey because, as we said, I remember it was probably a year and a half ago that I was renting a basement of someone's house. The divorce is expensive. I traveled a lot. I'd done some other things, and I wanted to start a podcast. And the person mentoring me was like, your lighting is terrible in this room because I'm in a basement, right? And I didn't have a professional light. And so I took a t-shirt and I nailed it to the ceiling to cover the light that I had, and then took a picture of that and was like, will this work? And he's like, this is great. And congratulations, welcome aboard. Like, everybody starts somewhere. So I love your outreach. I love when people actually do say, hey, you're a guy, I'm a guy, let's talk about this. So thank you for having me on. I appreciate you.
It's an absolute pleasure. It's after and it's been spoken about on many other episodes, when I sort of had this awakening experience, I went and did another 6 months worth of coaching. And we spoke about, what's my one thing? And, you think about running programs and, all the health work and everything else. And I dropped back on, you know what? One thing I'm good at is talking. The other thing I'm good at, because I'm in the corporate space, is actually having conversations with people. And I've always been fascinated about podcast space. So why don't I combine the skill set together and set up a podcast and then just start to invite people and have a chat? And that's what I've found. It's really funny. It's the one thing I'm passionate about and love. Every week, I get to spend between an hour and a half with a man, just having an open conversation about life, their journey, what's been happening in their life, where I'm at. And it's just a beautiful, releasing, connecting conversation. For yourself, I know you do podcasts and with a lot of men. How's that sort of set with you as well?
I just love people. I know it sounds so damn cliche, right? That like, wow, who doesn't love people? A lot of people don't love people. But it's an honor to sit across from anybody and get their story. Yeah. Actually, I should preface that. I should say I love people, but more I love their stories. Because especially in a social media age, especially in a polished, varnished, pedestalized world, we forget where people came from, where people started, that they hit rock bottom, multiple times. I've been on your side of the mic interviewing someone going, I had no idea. I thought you were just, like you were born, you were beautiful, life was easy. Someone handed you a lot of money and they somehow like money ends up in your mailbox and nothing bad has ever happened to you. And here you're telling me about your second divorce and your suicide attempt and your drug addiction and how you turned all of that around and got to where you are today. So I don't know, man. I just think it's an honor to talk to humans and to get the real part of them. Go ahead, look at my social media. I have a professional photographer, but like, I don't look like that. I try to keep the writing authentic or the story authentic, but this to me is still a fascinating medium because it's real. Right. And and it's nuanced. I'm not trying to fit this into like 400 characters. I get to say, wait a minute, actually, that thing I just said, I don't know if I still mean that now that it's out of my mouth. And there's a allowance for some more grace too.
Yeah. This is why I also love that the forum is the first thing that you spoke about. I love the fact of how men can tell their stories and go out there. What I love about the fact is that how most men after telling stories go, but I'm not defined anymore by that story, because I've actually now been able to pack up and move on and actually realize that was something that happened to me, but I've been able to move beyond the trauma and everything else. And now I've got this other amazing life. Right. The other thing that I like about this forum and exactly how my podcast works, right? There is no editing in this. Like, this is just, what people and other podcasts and everything else, and I'm not against it. That's fine. I mean, it's cut and it's produced and it's, produced down to the finest art, and the ums and the fucks and everything's taken out. And for me, it's like, if you want to sit in the background and just see what Traver and I talked about, we'll just come over to the podcast, right? Because it's sitting right beside us. And that's what I love, and most men that I've had on here, we just end up with this, beautiful flowing conversation. Yeah. The biggest risk often I find is to say, hey, I've got to appreciate the fact that you've only got a certain amount of time to actually have this conversation, because I'm sure some of my podcasts could be like a day and a half of just.
Oh, yeah. And I'm sure you do the same. Oh God, I have 50 more questions for you. I came with 50 and now I've had a couple people like, will you please come back? Like, please come back.
I've actually done that once before. I've had a guy come back. I was like, mate, you got to come back on the next week because we've got to an hour and a quarter. Like, there is so much more we haven't unpacked here. So it is like, dude, I'm back in
this subject.
Right. All right. So Let's take a bit of a step back.
Sure.
As most people know, my podcast is actually about helping people understand, as we spoke about earlier, right? We didn't all land here. We're not all of a sudden professional podcasters or running successful, man uncivilized, men's programs and you got the nation up and going. You started somewhere and there was some pain and there was some activity that took place. So do you mind taking us back a bit on the journey that we touched on the intro, that sort of all of a sudden that light bulb moment and then we can actually progress through from there?
Yeah. The starting point of this journey is being woken up by my ex-wife 6 years ago, saying something's wrong with the baby. We need to go to the hospital. And she was pregnant at the time. And I just got chills to saying that. It's shocking to even think, like, I had no idea that night where my life would end up a year later. And I had no idea a year later where it would end up 2 years later. Right. That was, if we go prior to that night, I lived a pretty blessed life. I didn't have the major thing that a lot of people have to deal with. I didn't have abuse in my background. I didn't have family members die. I didn't go to war. I didn't have a tragic accident or an illness. I lived a standard life. I got to do some cool shit. So I was out of the box thinker, but like I hadn't dealt with tragedy. I hadn't dealt with crisis. I think that's a better word, or both the same. And suddenly now I'm going, okay, all right, so this is a miscarriage. It happens. It happens to a lot of people. People then going on and have babies and families and great lives. Yep. I didn't know it was the start. It was the first domino. And the next domino was my ex-wife saying, you know what? I think that was a sign from the universe that you and I should be divorced. I'm leaving in an hour. This is some random morning, and boom, gone. I saw her 3 more times and I've never seen her since.
Wow.
It's the next day. My business partner I moved into his house because I couldn't handle being in my house. I thought I was going to throw up, or, it was like, what is going on with my life? How did this happen? And he said, I got to be honest with you. I think you and I should also separate the business and I should buy you out. This doesn't feel like it's what you want to do. And even though he was right, I didn't take in that moment. I was like, wait, how the fuck is my life falling apart right now? I am not that person who has to deal with this shit. Like, how arrogant, but like this stuff happens to other people. So it was an initiation of sorts into you're not really special. The human experience thing, guess what? It's going to happen to you too. And that was a hard pill to swallow, in addition to dealing with the trauma of those events and having to get divorced, leaving. And my business was a very successful gym that was very community oriented. So I left my community and set out on my own, and to answer some questions that I needed to answer. Was, who am I? Who am I without this woman? Who am I without that kid? Who am I without the title of I own this business, which is essentially how everybody would introduce me in that town. This is Traver. He owns this gym, right? Yeah. Who am I? And it wasn't until, that's a hell of a question. You can spend the rest of your life sitting under a tree meditating on mushrooms and then not get there.
And Zen Buddhists would argue that if you actually get the answer, you've got it wrong.
Yeah, you're fucked. You got to start all over again, right?
That's exactly.
The question too, which didn't come until almost 2 years later, was, who am I as a man? And whoa, where has this question been? Yep. And why hasn't this question been prevalent since the day I turned 15 or 16 or 17 or whatever it was, this coming of age period? So yeah, my journey was born out of pain and loss and shit. Like I know what rock bottom's like. I know what it's like to wake up and go, okay, don't have a kid, don't have a wife, don't have a job. Yeah. At 40 years old, I am a fucking failure. I have built and created nothing that still exists. Right. And then having that thought, and then also the whisper of, brother, this is freedom. You just got Control Alt deleted, right? Everything that you were building wasn't the right thing to be building. And I can go back now and I can see the blips of like, I wrote a blog for our gym, and that blog became wildly successful. It became more successful than the gym was, which is like, I'm not a writer. I'm an acupuncturist and a MMA fighter and a guy that wants to teach people how to deadlift. Why the hell is my blog taking off? Oh, wow. I really like writing. I'm getting up in the morning before teaching for the day and going to Toastmasters meetings, learning about public speaking. Why? I'm not a public speaker. I'm an acupuncturist. I'm a gym owner. I'm an MMA fighter. But in hindsight, I see like, what do I do for a living now? I'm a writer. I'm a speaker. I'm a teacher. So it was there. And then I can say this to guys hearing this afterwards. All of that was just getting rid of dead space. It was getting rid of all the ways that I actually knew on some level, this isn't the life I want to be living. Because the asterisk to this, and this is the uncomfortable asterisk, is I drank a fuckload. I smoked a ton of dope. I looked at more porn than a human can consume. I exercised twice a day. I had multiple businesses. I didn't sleep at night. I was miserable. But if you looked at me, you're like, this guy has it all.
Yes.
When I looked in the mirror, I was like, how can I be this disconnected? You got it. You did it. You did the thing that you set out to do. You've checked all the boxes. What the fuck is the problem? And so many men find themselves there. And it's not until a situation comes along and is like, oh, okie dokie, let's just rip the rug out from under you so you can realize that this bullshit way that you're living isn't how you're supposed to be living. So I hope that answers a bit of the question. It was, this is, if you had asked me 5 years ago, brother, I'll give you $1 million. I would have given you like, you're going to be a men's coach running a men's movement with 2 published books, 2 TED Talks. And I'm not just trying to list off my shit. I would be like, I have $1 million in cash I will give you that says that's not true.
Yeah.
And now I'm like, I can't imagine living any other way. Thank God all of that happened.
Yeah, it's a really interesting. So I just want to go back and double back over a couple of things in there. One of the things that you actually touched on, and I've actually just finished reading A New Earth by Eckhart Tolle, and that's because that's where I'm in my journey about my ego and where I'm at and what does that actually look like. And it's interesting how limiting it is when we attach ourselves and we create this identity. I am the gym owner. I am this. I am that. Right. And so in doing that, we basically close ourselves down to anything else that's open to us. So, our talent might be actually writing, but if I define myself as a gym owner that's, the superstar and showing how to do deadlifts, well, fuck it. That's what I'm going to keep doing because everyone comes to me because of that. And so that ability for us sometimes, we can either go, is that really who I am? Or as you said, I think in most situations it's due to, someone's walked up and say, that identity card, like this identity card that you've been carrying, I'll have that back now. Thanks. And over here, you've got no identity card and you've now got to work out who it is. And it's really fucking uncomfortable. It's so hugely uncomfortable. And that's where I sort of like the fact of, for me, when you talk about, that civilized versus uncivilized, for me, it's like comfortable versus uncomfortable, and I've been doing some conversations recently with people about stress management coping techniques. And one of the things I talk about is go and have a cold shower. And they're like, fuck off, I'm not having a cold shower. And you're like, yeah, because you know why? Because you don't want to become discomfort. Yeah. Where else in your life are you used to not being uncomfortable? Like it's a bit cold, I'll put a jumper on. That's a really hard conversation to have, but I'm not going to have it because I might feel uncomfortable. And all the cold shower is a mirror to your discomfort. And you'll stand there and go, oh, 10 seconds in, fuck it, I'm out. It's like, dude, there's blokes over here like yourself in Colorado in winter hopping in ice baths where it's like minus 2 degrees. Like it's a human body. If a dude's doing this over there, like, you can hop in a 12-degree cold shower, over here in Melbourne, Australia. Like, so just get on with it and ask the question, why are you so against feeling uncomfortable? Yeah. So, and that's a thing that's really sitting with me at this point in time.
Yeah. And why are you so uncomfortable with change? Right. Or the potential of change, the uncertainty of change. It was terrifying. I will be honest. It was terrifying for me to look forward at that point when everything had fallen away and see nothing ahead of me. I go like, wow, this is terrifying. I don't know what I'm going to do to make money. I don't know where I'm going to live. I don't know what I'm going to do with my time or energy. I don't know who I'm going to be with. Like, this is terrifying because my old relationship with uncertainty was nil. I didn't have one. I was like, uncertainty, let me get high. Uncertainty, let me crack a beer. Uncertainty, let me jerk off twice. Uncertainty, let me go lift. Let me go. No, I don't want to feel uncertainty. And now I have to have, that was an initiation as well into a relationship with uncertainty and an understanding that everything you have can go away in an instant. And if it does, there's going to be a period you got to lie on your back and lick your wounds. And then at some point, you're going to have to get up, dust yourself off, and get back in the fight. Even if that's just with one foot, saying, you know what I'm going to do today? I'm going to take a shower. That's it. It's my goal for the day. I don't know how to answer the question. I'm going to just journal for half an hour. I'm going to meditate for 20 minutes and just calm my mind. I'm going to go do some push-ups, right? To start really basic. I think so many times, especially men, when we experience loss, we want to recreate the entire kingdom in the day, right? The advice I got, and this was prolific from both men and women, was cool. Go one town over, start your own gym, immediately start dating again. You can be married and have a kid on the way in 12 months. Like, you can literally replicate this whole experience in 12 months or less. And I thought, God, what a waste of an opportunity that would be. And you know what? I have this nagging sense that I'll be right back here 3 years later because I missed the like slap in the face that the opportunity was, which is you're not supposed to keep going this direction. Right. That only came from something that said, guess what? This is going to suck. Saddle up. It's going to suck for a while. Don't try to make it suck less. Just be in the suck. Like, okay, cool. I'll sit in it.
And I love what you've spoken about there, because for me, that's the whole thing about, if I continue to live in the world of escapism, which is, drugs, porn, alcohol, avoiding the conversation and everything I do, go and spend all my life at a sporting club, not at home, facing into my personal problems or, relationship problems, then for me, what actually happens is that people go, oh, you slap in the face. They go, cool, slap in the face. I'm going to leave this partner. I'm going to leave this thing. And then they just go and find another one. And then you're talking to them 12 months later and they go, it's just not really working. Like, I'm spending all the time there. She doesn't like the fact I'm football club. You're going, fucking hell, man. Like, dude, like, we could keep slapping you. But unless you're going to be willing to face into the thing that's actually calling you, and it's calling you from the inside. This isn't something outside. It's already in you going, we're not meant to do this. And sometimes that slap, we feel it's an external slap. But sometimes it's actually, it's internally driven into us going, you're not meant to be doing this. You're not meant to be doing that. Here's where you're meant to be heading across. And being able to, as you said, just live into that space and go, let's go and try something completely new. And the thing is, I can guarantee, I shouldn't say that. I'll ask the question. I bet you now at the moment that you wake up one day and go, fuck, there's a level of uncertainty that I haven't met yet. Like, just because you're 3, 5, 6 years down the track, every single day, I'm guessing there's some levels of shit. That's something new. I get to choose now. Do I get to move in that uncertainty, or do I go, oh, I might just sneak back and, go back under the doona or go under the covers again and, lay back in bed. And that's what people maybe don't understand either, is that just because we're out here doing something new and sitting and having these conversations doesn't mean it's any easier. We've probably just learned to be more comfortable in the uncomfort of uncertainty, I suppose.
For sure. I speak to it, especially to men, like all of us have worked out at some point. And so we go to like weightlifting on day 1, or let's say day 60 of weightlifting, it hurts. It still hurts. Like it takes all my effort to get a bar off my chest. Now that maybe I have 60 kilos on the bar and it takes all my effort. And then a year later, I have 150 kilos on the bar. It still takes all my effort. It still hurts just as much. But what I'm able to move more weight, I'm able to be in relationship with more uncertainty, but it still sucks. There is no day. I wish someone had come and like knocked on my shoulder when I was 18. It was like, there's no day when things don't suck. There's days when they suck less. There's days when things are coming your way. There are days when the wind's at your back, but just know that this is life, peaks and valleys, peaks and valleys, peaks and valleys. And now after running, hundreds of men's groups and watching that same cycle, where in January, you got a guy who's like, my life has never been better. My relationship's amazing. My health is amazing. I'm making a ton of money. I can't fuck up. I can like sneeze and things work better. And then 2 months later, it's like, my relationship's in the shit. My health is bad. I just had an investment blow up in my face. And fortunately, he's seen that cycle enough times too, where we go, okay, cool. You know what's going to happen 2 months from now? You're going to be back on the top of the mountain, or 6 months or a year, or whatever it may be. So take a breath. Realize that this is just the way the world works, and the way the more ease with which you can navigate those ups and downs, the more support you can call in when you are on rock bottom, the more you can celebrate, but not from an egoic place when things are going really well. Because you kind of learned, you know what? It's really cool up here, but man, the fall's gonna like,
That's right.
something's coming. I don't want to like quote call in the negative, but shit, we know it. It's just life is cyclical.
Yeah. And I think that's the other part about doing this. It is about, yes, celebrate the successes, but understand that with every success that you're going to do, I mean, that basically there's in one of the universal laws, like there's 7 odd universal laws. If you look across Zen and Taoist and the Indian and a whole lot of cultures. And one of them is basically that there's, it's a pendulum. But for every person that's made a lot of money, there's someone who's extremely poor. Here's the thing, that could be you on that same pendulum. So just because the money's coming to your bank account today, or that you've had that successful book launch, or you've had that successful thing, don't forget, you could be the person in your life that ends up on the other end of that pendulum at one point in time. How you handle that end at the success, you have to have the same level of grace about how you handle the other end. And just understand. And that's the key for me, is like, how do you balance out that to go, okay, so life's happened at this end. Am I going to now all of a sudden, am I going to celebrate that as a learning as much as I celebrated this as a success? And how do I move through that cycle back and forward? And that's what I'm starting to learn more of, to go, just where it is and how things happen. You go, okay, well, that's happened over here. I can judge that as being bad, or I go, that's inquiry. That's interesting. How do I now? What do I do over here? Like, that's like even a bit more discomfort than what I thought it was going to be. And then you see how you just move your way back again.
Yeah.
I want to. There's a, and I will go back to, because I heard you talk about this on the Sacred Sons, and I really love this. How you came up with uncivilized, like man uncivilized. I've from memory, it's you and a mate, you go on and stay at this place, you're on a couch or something. Can you talk into that story? Because
sure.
I just love how you all of a sudden have that realization of what difference between a civilized man and why we need to become uncivilized.
Yeah. At the time, I wasn't really interested in men's work. I remember literally having a business consultant at the time, and I had to post this video to a Facebook group of his people, saying like, what are you here for? What do you want to do? And I listed 3 things that I wanted to accomplish business wise. And I remember saying like, and if I have any time left over, I'm curious about working with men. That was like a month before this event happens. And so I get this inkling though. I want to run a men's group. I want to start something I'm in Brooklyn, New York. So I'm in this massive building. I'm like, you know what? Fuck it. I'm throwing a meeting. I just want to see, will anybody come to a meeting if I throw it? So I promote the hell out of it, put it on Meetup, on LinkedIn, on my Instagram, all the things. I'm like, hey, just an open conversation. We're going to talk about some men's stuff, blah, blah, blah. The night of, I go downstairs, like blow the doors open, thinking I'm like the next Tony Robbins. And there's one guy. God bless him. I still have a photo of him and I together. right? And so long story short is I spend like 40 minutes. I don't think I take a breath, just like unloading on him about masculine dynamics and integrity and boundaries and being grounded and like, you are the fucking mountain and the feminine is the storm and blah, blah, blah. I'm like super excited. And I think when I did take my first breath at the 40-minute mark, he's like, hey, man, can I just stop you? I followed you since your fitness days. I just came to see if you could maybe help me lose 20 pounds. And I was like, oh, like all the wind went out of my sails. I was like, okay, cool. Sure. Tell me about you. Tell me about the situation. And here's what it came down to. He goes, I just have this thing. I love McDonald's breakfast burritos.
Yeah.
And I was like, you gotta be fucking kidding me. Right? Like, I have a master's degree in Chinese medicine. I spent 4 years studying that. I've seen thousands of patients. I've helped people lose tens and thousands of pounds over my career. You can't not go to McDonald's? And he was like, yeah, I just can't not go because their coffee is so good. And again, I was like, I'm going to go upstairs. I'm going to buy you a fucking French press. I'm going to bring it down and I'm going to solve your issue right here. And so, I took the picture, went our ways, and, true story. He actually did lose the weight, sent me a picture of him. He's a cop. He was like, did a charity fight in Madison Square Garden, which is a huge event, and yada, yada, yada. Okay. So I'm living with another guy I met at TED named Adam Cobb. And I go back upstairs to our apartment and I'm like, motherfucker, this guy wasted my time. Blah, blah, blah. I'm like grumbling and bitching. And he's like, okay. Calm down. And then we have this very beautiful conversation about our fathers, about things that we didn't experience growing up, about relationships that had gone. We stayed up to like 11:30 and then went to bed. But we like connected on a very deep level. That's the kind of guy he is. Mm-hmm. And then at 5, we got up because he was a personal trainer and he built this massive gym in the building. And we were about to go downstairs and work out. And he goes, hey man, real quick, like, when's the last time you ate McDonald's? And this is when I just got chills again. I remember looking at him and going, I don't eat that shit. It's fucking civilian food, and he's like, wait a minute. He actually, even at 5 a.m, he's making like a smoothie or a pre-workout shake, takes his phone out because he's like a big social media person. He starts filming me. He goes, what do you mean it's civilian food? Like, tell me more about this. I was like, dude, I don't eat that shit. Like, first of all, look at us. We were living in a beautiful apartment in Brooklyn. We don't have a television. We don't have alcohol in the house. We don't have drugs in the house. We're getting up at 5 a.m. to work out. We spent the evening actually having a legitimate conversation about shit that matters, not women that we're fucking and how much money we make. We're actually talking about real stuff. This to me is not how civilized people live. And so I don't want to be civilized. And I don't want the result of what I thought was a civilized life, which was obesity, diabetes, kids that won't talk to you, a wife that won't fuck you, a career that you hate, no inspiration. And I know I'm being broad here, but that's what I experienced so much in men. I don't want to have a lack of intimacy. I don't want to not know my feelings. I don't want to follow the standard track because it doesn't seem like it's a good way to live. And he was like, cool, put his phone down. We went downstairs and started working out. And that word, like, I couldn't get it out of my head. Like, uncivilized. I am fucking uncivilized. How I've lived the last year, why I got kicked out of my marriage, why I got kicked out of that business. It was too conventional. I felt like I was being strangled and suffocated in that life. And so I came upstairs and I remember I called the consultant. I was like, hey, I'm going in a new direction. I want to work with men. And I want to work around this thing, uncivilized. And he goes, cool, let's call it uncivilized man. I was like, nope, it's man uncivilized. And I threw it on Instagram that day. I was like, hey, I have an idea. Just let me throw this out. Let's see what happens. What if we took the like basic, traditional, primal parts of being a man, the shit that we still love, protection, providing, picking up heavy shit, leading, like knowing how to take care of yourself, knowing how to fuck some shit up in the world, building businesses, building ideas, like being strong, powerful, and We combined it with consciousness.
Mm.
We actually felt our hearts. We didn't run in the face of intimacy. We didn't run in the face of connection. We weren't terrified of depth. We weren't terrified of relationship. What if we actually incorporated our pain and we learned from it? And I was like, you know what? I don't know if anybody's going to buy this, but like, I'm throwing it out there. And I threw it out there and my life changed forever. My inbox exploded. My email exploded. That post exploded. It was people going, thank fucking God. We have been looking for this for years. We don't want to go all in on the primal. Like, we don't all want to be Navy SEALs and, CEOs of Fortune 1 million companies and Dan Bilzerian or whoever, nor do we want to be just like very feminine, vegan, poet, hippie, yogi, spiritualists. But we want a little bit of both. And this was both men and women who reached out. And that, it just blew my mind. It's like, holy shit, this idea may have some legs. And so that's what started it. Right. And that journey I have been on, I think this is like 4 years straight of like, okay, I need a website. I need a course. I need I need a podcast. I need to write a book. I need to blah, 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 blah. And it's been boom, 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 boom. And now we have, 13 groups all over the world. I've got hundreds of men in a membership. I've got the book has sold thousands of copies. It's a real thing, not because of anything I think I created, but because the need was so deep. Men were caught between these two paradigms of this stoic, unfeeling, no heart, numb human, just go, do, produce, consume, like destroy. And the other option, which felt like, hey, we need you to collapse and be apologizing for being a man, and everything about you is toxic. And how dare you have a penis? How dare you have a sex drive? How dare you you smell like a dude? Like, what the fuck? No wonder guys were confused. Yeah. I think I'm rambling now, but that's how it all came about.
No. Thank you for sharing that, because and you've almost replicated what you said on the Sacred Sons, and that was absolutely beautiful. Right?
Thank you.
When I heard you say that and remember it, and I'm like, fuck, this guy's got a book. And at the intro, like I said, fuck yes, like I couldn't wait to get the book. And as soon as and even my wife grabbed the book, she's like, I'm reading this thing first. And she's flicking through pages going, what the fuck? Like you need to be this. Like you need like she was like, and I'm like, give me back my book. I want to read the book. Let me get through the book. We're fighting over the book because we just went through, and I'm like, that makes so much fucking sense to me. Like that was my intuition was calling. And again, like Man Uncivilized, I think, and I don't think you've got up on Amazon, and I think there's valid reasons for that. It is now.
That's the secret. I just had an interview yesterday with Amazon, who was like, okay, you've passed all the tests, and we're shipping a big bunch to them, because I know shipping for guys in Australia, New Zealand, and Europe is really expensive. So it is going to be on Amazon probably by the time this podcast comes out.
So that's really awesome. Otherwise, look, just head straight to Traver's, and I'll talk about your website on the outro. But the thing about that is, like, I just recommend it to so many people, because everything I read in that book, and by the way, it's the most amazing layout of a book I've ever seen as well, because it is so beautifully chaotic, but in its simplicity and how it works. And you can go to any section and stuff just jumps into your face and slaps you. Traver in the background, I can see it says the revolution will not be civilized. And I love that. That's one of his sayings, like, no revolution has come from a civilized man. No change has come in this world from a civilized person ever. Go back and look through history. And the challenge we got in the society even today, given, we're obviously living in the middle of let's call it a pandemic.
Sure.
Because that's what they like to market it as. But the thing about that is that there is so much of civilization happening at this point in time, or what I'm calling indoctrination. And what we need is the people who are going to move us out of this, the people who are going to be able to help us progress forward. Every one of those who can touch their heart and go, I don't want to be civilized anymore. I don't want to be the people pleaser. I don't want to be the one who's actually towing the line because I feel I have to, because my mum won't talk to me anymore or my brother won't talk to me anymore. I've got family who just now don't deal with me. I've got
Me either.
friends that I used to deal with at school who have just now blocked me and shadow blocked me. And you know what? I'm okay with that. Because if the worst thing I'm doing in my life is actually being uncivilized and living my truest life and being willing to actually look at all evidence and not be closed off and not sitting there and going, you're one of them, and go, no, no. So let me tell you why. Sorry, I want to ask you why you feel this way. Why are you doing this? Where do you come from these angles? The world's a much different place, and that's where ultimate change will take place. It won't change because of the 90% of people who are civilized. Will not radically change this world. It's the likes of, Traver, yourself, who are just purely out there, just leading by example and going, here is what it's about. I am going to be living a bit dangerous. But I'm not going to be a danger to anyone. And I love that saying, like a man needs to be dangerous, but not a danger. Our partners need to feel safe around us, but safe is, I'm not going to do harm to you, but by fuck, I'm going to protect you. And you should feel that in your heart, and you should see that if I'm there, I'm your protector. And it's not because I see you as a weak person, but by geez, my role as a man is to protect you, my family, and I'll help do that for you. But I know that if you needed to, you could just tap in your masculine and you could stand up as much as I could, and you could be protected, because I've seen you do that for your kids, and that's what we just need to get to.
I'm wearing a ring. I don't know if you can see it, that a guy in New Zealand named Gold Pan Pete made for me. And he took the saying, let others be safer as I walk among them. And that was a mantra of mine from the book, and a mantra of the guys in the nation, which is, who needs to step up right now in the midst of all this bullshit? It's men. And we have to step up with a hand on our hearts. We can't just be like, oh, fuck, I'll burn the system down. Great. I've watched that idea for 30 years from people who like to post on Facebook, but not anybody who's actually out there making change, which is, how are you sovereign in the middle of this? Are you talking to other men? Are you expressing your feelings? Are you checking in? Are you supporting the people around you? Are you there for your family? Or are you numb? Are you drunk, stoned, whatever, it checked out, unwilling to deal with anything? Right? I get it. Pain is hard. This is a very, very painful time for most people. And yet it's an opportunity for us to say, that doesn't feel good to me. That does not sit right with me. I'm not going to partake in that system. I'm not going to be a party to that.
Yeah.
But I hear a lot of people bitching about Amazon. I'm like, cool, don't buy anything on Amazon. There you go. That's the best thing you can do. As opposed to making 5 Instagram posts about how Jeff Bezos is a piece of shit and then going and ordering a bunch of stuff on Amazon because it's more convenient than getting it at your corner store, right? Like, ask yourself, where can you remove yourself from a system that's actively trying to enslave and kill you, or make you sick, or keep you sick, or is not supporting you, saying, hey, wait a minute, this doesn't feel good. All of us we're getting together and we're no longer playing this game, you guys. And that's exactly what needs to happen right now. Is people need to stand up to any kind of tyranny and call out just the blatant bullshit. Just call it out. I literally just read an article before hopping on here of a CEO of a very holistic restaurant chain here in the US, made a big post about how obesity and COVID are not best friends. And so perhaps we need to actually work on some underlying health issues here in the US, where like 60% of us are obese. He had to take the post down, apologize. They were trying to cancel him. He was like, you're fat phobic. I was like, this is medical stuff. This is not radical. It's like, hey, you know what we all need to do? We need to go for 5-minute walks. How dare you? How dare you shame those people who can't walk? It's like, where did we lose our common sense? But you use the word, right? I equate civilized living to layers and layers of indoctrination. That I've had to uncouple myself from. Like, people get surprised, like, wow, you drive a car, you have internet, but you're uncivilized. Like, yeah, I have health insurance. I'm part of a system, but I can think for myself. I act for myself. I try to get all of my food from places I know where it came from. I read reports on medical studies. I meditate so I'm clear. I don't actually engage a lot in social media despite being on social media. I don't watch the news. I don't listen to the bullshit. Right? I'm sovereign in that way. I have a small group of people around me who I know are also doing the same work that I can check in with, who check in with me. That to me is the what we need to do as communities right now.
Yes. Yeah.
Right. When I first moved, I first moved to Evergreen. This is this little town in Colorado. Moved out in the woods, and this was in the middle of COVID. Right. And I remember I went and knocked on people's doors and stood 5 feet back. Was like, hey, I'm new. I live in the house down there. I'm an acupuncturist. So if you get hurt or people get sick, I'm happy to help. I'm also pretty physically capable. So if this winter, if you need help with your driveway, if you need help stuff moving, like, let me know. That to me is an act of revolution in 2021.
Yes.
I know their names. I know their phone numbers. Like, how many people don't know who's living next door to them? They come check on me. Like, this is a terrible story, but I had to rent a car in the middle of winter. And even in Colorado, they gave me a Camaro, which is the worst winter car ever. And I got stuck at the bottom of my driveway. I got stuck on a flat part of land. And then within 30 minutes, I had 4 different neighbors come out and help me move the car.
Yeah.
That to me is like, because I went and introduced myself, because I went and talked to people, because I remembered that I'm human. I'm not my Instagram feed. I'm not CNN. I'm not the statistics that the government's putting out. Right. Revolution starts within.
Yeah.
I'll leave it at that.
No, sorry to cut you off because I absolutely fully agree. The one thing I've just done recently is just run a couple of online Zoom free stress management coping mechanisms. You know why? Because I've got the tools. Because I've learned the tools. So why wouldn't I share that with that? And if a person picks up on that tool and that makes that smallest difference in their life that they can actually manage, or they can start to see beyond. And I think the thing where people say, as you're talking about, where people go, but you're part of the system. Like, I work in corporate IT. I'm an IT program manager, right? So I'm right in the middle of this corporate bullshit that takes place. And the fucking post from CEOs about, in Australia, we got CEOs coming out and saying, our company will give special privileges to those who vaccinate. And I'm actually posting going, so your company is now supportive of segregation and discrimination. Like, absolutely posting back in LinkedIn and these spaces. And my wife is like, really? And I'm like, no, this is why I'm doing it. I'm not there. Right. It's not my ego pushing it. It's because there are people out there who don't believe in it either, but don't feel they've got a voice, or don't have the courage to stand up. If I can at least put in those comments and call out the bullshit about segregation and discrimination, because that's what it is. You can't choose medical procedure over racism, religion, or anything else. If you discriminate, you discriminate. It's fucking blank straight out for me. If I put out notes, someone else goes, oh, fuck, thank God. I was feeling the same way, but I didn't have the courage to talk up. But I know someone else out there is actually talking up on behalf of me. And now I can feel a bit better. That's why I do it. That's because the people who just feel that they'll lose their family, lose their friends, or, I've had a work colleague who, when I got moved into a leadership role, started to suggest that I should think about what I post on social media. Because as a leader, that may not be seen as the right way to lead. And I'm like, mate, fuck you. Like, I will lead my way. I'm not leading the civilized way. I'm leading the uncivilized way, because that's the bullshit that we should not be doing. And you telling me not to do that is like, that's crap, right? Because there's a new style of leadership we need, which is someone standing in their truth and being willing to actually tell it and talk to it. I've said to anyone, ask me any fucking question, I'll give you an answer. Unless it's about intimate stuff with my partner, I'll tell you anything. Like, I'll tell you about the porn addiction, about the alcoholism. Why wouldn't I? Like, I don't carry guilt and shame for it anymore. That was who I was. Right. But I've landed where I am now. Like, why wouldn't we have these open conversations? But others go, oh, fuck, like, that's a bit deep. It's like, no, because I know you're a drug addict and I know you're an alcoholic, but you just don't want to face into it. All I'm doing is, like, mirror, Exactly. And I think that's the challenge we have now. We need to stand up. We need to be the mirror to civilization. Go, that's how fucked your civilization is. Exactly. Not judging you for it, but where we're heading is not good. And you know, and so that's why I really thank the likes of yourself who is building this nation. Like you're building this uncivilized nation. And I see it through your Instagram posts, and I see the stories of people tag you in and everything else about what they're doing and how proud they are that they're actually standing up and going, cool, I've got a voice, and I'm actually I'm going to stand there and show that I can be this man, and I can be proud, and I can be strong. But by jizz, I can post the fact that, you know, yesterday I was in tears because, you know, I recalled a trauma or something came up, or it got so overwhelming for me that I just broke down, you know, and be willing to talk into that as well.
Yeah, we need it. It's just, we need honesty. To me, civilized living is dishonest. Don't tell me if I eat this thing that it's going to make me healthy when it will actually kill me. Don't tell me that this drug is going to save me and then list really fast, but in quietly, that it's also going to like give me rectal bleeding and like my eyes are going to pop out of my head and I'm going to have a tumor. Like, just stop lying to me. That is what I'm asking for. Everybody has an agenda. I have an agenda, but I'm speaking truth to it. I'm not calling shit. I like literally put a video up the other day. I was like, I don't have a fancy watch. I'm not renting a Lamborghini and standing in front of it and shooting my video. Like, my buddy's holding the camera. This is what I'm doing. These are my thoughts. You want to be a part of this thing? Come be a part of it. I'm not going to go all pomp and circumstance on you. Right. And I'm definitely not going to lie to you because I'm done with it. I'm sick of it. And look at the civilized world right now. Look at the division. Here in the US in 2019, it was men versus women. I wrote that book in the middle of Me Too. And it was just like, guess what, folks? We kind of have to get along for the population to stay and keep going. 2020 in the US, black versus white. 2021, vaccinated versus unvaccinated. I literally was going to throw something out today and say, what do you guys think it's going to be next year? What is it? I'm so curious because it's got to be something. Because if we all get together and decide like, hey, guess what? We're all kind of fucked in this mess, and we actually take some action, then the whole system comes down.
Yes.
The whole thing falls. And I'm not a conspiracy. I'm not like, just look, you don't have to be a conspiracy theorist to go, wow, amazing. The media posts this, and this, and chooses these specific words when it relates to this population. These people are getting censored. These people are not allowed to tell you the truth. Like I interviewed Kirk Parsley a couple weeks ago. Dr. Kirk Parsley, medical doctor for the Navy SEALs. I think he probably knows what he's doing if he's allowed to have access to that community. Got kicked off Twitter early in the pandemic for saying like, hey, these studies don't make sense to me, so let's look at them differently. Oh, guess what? You're gone. I remember him being like, well, you know, who am I to read a medical study? Right?
What qualifications do I have?
Yeah, seriously. Like, I only went to med school. I'm only a doctor. But why is that? These are the questions I want people asking. Why is there a push for a mandate? Why is there a push for control and yet a counter push against dialogue, against nuance, against critical thinking? Like, I literally saw a Wall Street Journal or a Washington Post article here in the US saying critical thinking is bad right now. I was like, oh my God, they're just blatantly saying it. They're just literally blatantly saying it. It should be like, hey, thinking for yourself, why that's racist, sexist, homophobic, ableist, awful, and you are the devil's child if you do it. Like, that's like next month's article. Just stop thinking for yourself. If you question us, you are a bad person. Okay. Oh, good. At least now you guys are being honest, right?
No, I love it. I think before we kicked off, we spoke about we could obviously spend a lot of time having a conversation because we're on a very similar pathway and everything else. So I'm conscious of your time and you're being extremely generous. The way I like to finish up is just asking the men I interview is, you know, I know this is really hard because I'll talk about, is there a single message or something, a message that you could put out to the men and even the women that are listening to this, got men in their lives? What's a message you feel that you could put out to them just for something to think about or something to go about, or even one of the mantras from the book that you would just like to put out to say, men, this is what we think we should be doing?
I think this is what's important for men right now, especially. we have been denied access culturally to our feelings and our hearts. And I know a lot of guys are going to hear that and want to tune out because it sounds woo-woo, it sounds fluffy, it sounds weak, it sounds feminine. But to me, the ideal man, like a man who's actually thriving in the world, has equal access and knows when to use his head, his heart, and his balls, right? And knows equal access, equal relationship with all three. Men right now, we're really stuck up here in our heads, right? But we're void of this feeling place. And I think if men actually stopped, took a breath and went, wow, this does not feel good. I am not okay with this. And then dropped down into their balls and went, now I got to fucking do something about it. While keeping access to their hearts. I'm not calling for armed revolution here. I'm saying you got to have those three pieces with you at all times. If you can do that, you will be a safer man. You will be a better man. You will be a leader. You will be more trustworthy. You will be the kind of man that society, not just me, but culture is actually screaming for. But they're screaming into the wind because they're getting drowned out by men are toxic, vaccinated versus unvaccinated, follow or don't. They're getting shut down. So men, this is the time. Especially men where you are, where I know there's heavy control. It is time to stand up. It is time to bind together. It is time to have honest conversations with other men, not just about the headlines, but hey, does that sit okay with you? No. Let's not skip it and go talk about football and pussy and all. Like, is this okay with you? This isn't okay with me. And then what can we do? Right? Again, the system is so big. I'm not asking people to take down the system, but I'm saying, as opposed to being like, oh my God, Amazon's too big, we'll never conquer it. Don't order from them.
Yeah.
Right? Make sure you're in good shape. Make sure health is your number one priority. Make sure you have so much connection in your life, deep connection with other people, because we're in the shit right now. Anybody who's played a team sport, who's been to war, who's done hard things, realizes you look to your right, you look to your left, you're like, I'm okay. Like, there's shit falling out of the sky, but at least I know I'm covered. Like, these guys are with me. But 99% of the population right now is going, wow, there's shit falling out of the sky and I'm alone. I better crack a drink. I better smoke a joint. I better numb out on TV. And there's nothing wrong with any of those in moderation or in with consciousness.
Yes.
But man, if you're avoiding what's happening because it's painful or it may require you to do something, then I'm asking you to step the fuck up. That's to both men and women. This is a fight for your sovereignty. This is a fight for your freedom, right? Here in America, yeah, we're a little rah freedom, but man, now do people realize why? Because you're watching your rights as a human slowly get eroded. And people are like, hey, that won't happen. That happened. Well, that won't happen. That happened. Right? It's time to actually bind together and do something. And people, again, I'm going to go back here, like, keep your damn hearts open. Feel. The system needs you to be unfeeling for it to manipulate you. You got to get that. Who are the easiest ones to get not to feel? Us, men. Therefore, who are the easiest ones to manipulate? We are. Oh, we'll just convince you to kill each other. How do we do it? We get you to shut your hearts off, and we tell you that they're the enemy. Cool. And we put like posters up. All right, cool. Go kill each other. Like that. It's that easy with us. Imagine if every man was like, wait a minute, I'm not going to war. I'm just not going. Like, this is the dumbest thing ever, especially here in the US. We just watched the whole travesty of Afghanistan. God bless everybody who served, but I would love for the entire military to just be like, you know what? Actually, this doesn't make sense to us anymore. Sorry, police force. You know what? We're just not enforcing this. This does not feel good to us as humans. I know we may lose our jobs, but if all of us do it, man, do we got some power.
Yeah.
We learned something profound last year. Profound. The entire world will have to change if we all do something. What did we all do last year? Most people, they stayed home. And what happened? The whole world changed, right? Business changed, tech changed, how we interact changed, our health changed. We all stayed home. So yeah, if everybody was to start feeling, I think the whole system would fall. And we could then replace it with one that actually served us and was sustainable. And I think people forget, man, 2 years ago, people were hurting. Like, I know I don't know your country that well, but I don't think everyone was like, man, things are just great 2 years ago. Like, people were struggling. Like, it was a shit show here in the US 2 years ago. Like, people weren't doing okay 2 years ago. Now we've dumped like 5 more traumas on them and be like, wow, I don't know why everyone's so like gun shy and shell shocked and easy to manipulate. I think that was like a 7-minute answer to a simple question. So I'll shut the fuck up now.
I love that answer. It was perfect. And you're right. We were hurting 2 years ago, and now in Melbourne, in our 6th lockdown, we're fucked.
Oh man.
6th lockdown, and we've extended it again, and we're back to having a curfew. Like, right? Seriously, like, and
you're children. You're getting treated like children.
It is just crazy. And so when we go and do freedom marches, which I've been actively involved in, that's where my family and friends have just shut out, going, "You're killing me." I'm like, "Fuck off! No. I'm the one actually saving you." And everyone out there, that tens of thousands are out there, these are the people who are actually saving you. And in 3 years' time, you either go, thank you, or you go, fuck, I wish I had joined them. But just remember now that you had a choice. You could have joined, or you could have accused. And nearly every person in the last 18 months who said, this is going to happen, fuck off, conspiracy theorist. No, seriously, this is going to happen. Passports are coming. This is happening. And they go, fuck off. It's never going to happen. They could never put those controls in. And now they're advocating, going, put it in, because I want to be part of the person who can fly. I want to be the part of this. I'm gonna get injected with chemicals purely because I want the choice to be able to fly. It's like, no. As soon as you got injected, you took away your choice. Now, I'm not judging you for it, because you've probably had many other jabs up until this point in time, because you kept thinking that your choice to stay safe and healthy was to be chemically induced. But that's because you never stop back and going. And I think for me, in what you were saying before, it comes down to two different things. Are you going, does this sound right? Or are you going, does this feel right?
Right.
Most people go, it sounds right.
Right.
But if you tapped into your heart, you go, it doesn't feel right. Right. And I think that's what we got to try to tap into. So thank you. This
My pleasure. Thank you.
An amazing, beautiful conversation.
Thank you.
Everything I had hoped it would be, everything that I hopefully called in that it would be. So I would like, I know it's probably getting near your dinner time over in Colorado. Look, before we finish, sorry, I know you're probably going to go. I love the fact that you have a bear turning up to your bin most days. Like, if people don't know, like, there's a black bear. Like, we don't have bears here in Australia, right? Like, we got snakes and key and all that sort of stuff. But the fact that, like, to be honest, me, and I know they're dangerous, I just want to go, come on, give us a cuddle. Come on, like, come on, let's have a chat, because you look like a really cool thing. So,
it's so damn cool. I'll give you a 30-second story on that. I interviewed a guy named Brian McKenzie who was talking about, how do you get to a 5-minute breath hold? Like, how do you hold your breath for 5 minutes? You're saying how it so much of it to deal with childhood trauma. So take that, put it to the side. I'm downstairs with my girlfriend. I'm like, let's see how long we can hold our breath. And so I'm about to hit the start button on the stopwatch, and I hear my neighbor's dog just going ballistic. And I was like, you know what? That's not the like normal bark. That's the something's wrong bark. Let me just go see what it is. And I look out, and there's this giant bear in the yard. I was like, Katie, come look at this. Come look at this. And thinking, like, we laughed, like, what if we were sitting here going, oh, and this is like and a bear is walking through our yard, but we miss it because we're trying to see if we can hold our fucking breath to like the minute mark. So I loved it. It was like in the middle of the daytime. Bear didn't give a shit. Knocked the garbage cans over. Just walked in the middle of the street and was like, "This is your town, brother. Like, we're just living here, man."
I mean, the worst for us, if you live somewhere, you might see a kangaroo jump down the street, but there's no fucking bears. Like, anyway, Thank you very much, Trevor. I really love this chat. I really thank
pleasure.
you for responding to my little intuitive post. That just shows the man that you are. The fact that you're a human. You do respond. Have a beautiful day. I wish you all the best with the Man Uncivilized. I'm certainly I'm still a subscriber. I still see all the stuff you're doing, and you continue to inspire me every single day. So keep up the work, and you're making this world a much better place. So thanks, man.
Sir. I appreciate you.
So guys, look, I'm extremely humbled. There's a lot of gratitude. As I said, like when I first started my journey, Traver was a guy that I just like, look at this guy doing out there, and he's made me so much inspiration to actually have a chance to have now met him face to face and had this beautiful conversation, a lot of deep stuff, a lot of laughs. It's just, I'm just going to be walking away. I'm just buzzing. Like seriously, the amount of energy running through me is huge at the moment. So in relation to Traver, go to his website, www.manuncivilized.com. You can find him on Instagram at Traver Boehm, and on all podcast platforms. Check out the Uncivilized podcast with Traver. He's got some amazing guests, and effectively similar to what we've just had this conversation. He's such a beautiful person. So I'm going to wrap up the episode now. So that's it for episode 38 of the Unearthed Man podcast. You can find me on LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram. So sending everyone much love and care, Milvo.